องที่ยืนมาประคองยืนปลอบใจน้องเห็นน้ำตาคลอเบา
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel again. Somebody sent me a story today. I've read through it and it's quite a nice relationship story. And when I read it, I thought, yeah, I'll put this one out next Saturday or the Saturday after because I've got a few lined up. And do you know what? It's raining in the UK. I'm absolutely bored out of my tree and I thought, you know what? I'll do this story now. I know some of you guys don't like me reading from a piece of paper. You prefer me to just talk into the camera. But you know what? When I read them, I can actually churn these out a lot faster than the ones that I've had to prepare in my mind, as it were, because I've got to read them over and over and over and try and remember them. My memory isn't as good as it used to be at my age. So, you know, if I do these on the fly, especially this one that's just come in today, it's such a nice story. I thought I'd put it out for you and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So I'll just jump straight into it and you see what you think of this one. So it starts off, well, it all started a few years ago when I first returned to Pattaya after 26 years absence. The usual story, married and divorced with not much to do at home. I visited Thailand 30 years ago when I was 26 and 30. I'm now 60. In 2016, I decided to visit Pattaya for 2 weeks for the relaxation and the fun. When returning, I was amazed at how different it was and how it had grown. The first week I was getting my feet wet doing the usual nighttime escapades. It was great to be in a place where you can do things that would not be acceptable at home for a 56-year-old. I know all about the sponsor and white knight things, so I wasn't worried about that, at least not in the beginning. After a couple of weeks of jumping around in all the different go-go bars, etc., I met a young lady of 24 years old from a go-go bar. We instantly hit it off, but before hitting the hotel, in brackets it was early, we stopped into a few other places where she knew some of the girls. Wow, she was fun to be with, and I hadn't had a time like this since 30 years. It made me feel like I was 25 again. That's a really great feeling that you can get in Thailand when you're 56. The next morning we had breakfast, and after we stayed together without asking her to stay or her asking me to stay, it was just that type of connection. So for the next week we hung out together, went to different restaurants, bars, and of course visited her friends. I guess it was just to show them what she had reeled in. She never outright asked for money, but wanted to go shopping in the outdoor market. She has a young son and wanted to buy him some clothes. I know the old fool thing is starting to set in. For most of the week, I was running around like an infatuated schoolboy having a great time. So we come to the last day and I was getting really depressed because all we had was one day left to get together. Because of the fun we were having, I forgot that I had to pay her bar fine for the last week. So we went back to her go-go. I paid back the back money and her bar fine for the night. A lot of the girls were looking at us again. I felt like a fish that had just been reeled in. So the day it was time to leave, and she said she wanted to go back home to Issan for a while and to see her son. I said to her, I'm going to the airport this afternoon, so why don't you come with me? Take a flight home to Issan instead of the bus. We get to the airport and she asked me for money because she will not be working. I know this was coming, so I was not surprised or taken back. So I gave her some money. On the trip back, I really felt bummed out. I now had to go back to my humdrum lifestyle until my next trip. As a side note, this trip was not supposed to be my first back. I had one planned for November, but I couldn't wait. At the last minute scheduled this one. As usual, she gave me her Line. Line is a social media app. It's a bit like WhatsApp. It's very, very popular in Thailand, Line. Before the trip, I'd never heard of Line. And when I got back home, she was lining every day, sometimes twice. I really wanted to see her again, but I was not going to support her as we agreed on nothing. So I gave her money every now and then and she was happy. So as the weeks dragged on, before my trip in November, she asked me if I wanted to visit her village. Now let me get this out of the way. This is my opinion. This is him speaking, not me. This is my opinion, and my opinion only about visiting a young lady in her village, and he's put in capitals. Don't do it. Why? Because you will never look at a bar girl the same again, because you see how poor they are, and at least you see how poor they are and you start to feel really sorry for them. So I go back in November, but I told her I was coming in 2 days later than I was. I wanted to hit a couple of go-go bars before heading north. I fly up to her area in Issan and the flight was great. Looking at the sights and landscape felt like I was in a Vietnam War movie. I get in late afternoon and there's a whole bunch of people there to greet me. Anyway, when I got off the plane, I give her a hug and maybe a kiss, but she becomes very rigid and no kiss. More on this later. The first stop on the way back home is to Makro. Makro's a big hypermarket, big supermarket like Tesco, something like that. We're to stop at a Makro box store. She asked if we can get some things for my arrival, so here we go. Hook, line and sinker, in for a penny, in for a pound. I know what most Thais want in this store, cases of Chang beer and a bunch of that rock gut, Thai whiskey if you can call it that. So I also buy some safe things for me to eat. I bought enough of the beer and things to last them for a month, in which it didn't. I never seen people that can drink like Thais. It's like a national pastime up there. I've mentioned that in another video because it's, you know, some of the foreign guys who live up there have told me the same thing. There's not a lot to do. We then go to a resort, just some large and, we then go to a small resort, in brackets, just some large and small cottages that I'm going to be staying in. Nice place and only $15 a night, real bargain. So now it is just her and I. I start to do what any man who hasn't seen a girl in a few months would do, but she's just not the same. I ask her about this and what happened at the airport. She dismissively says, Thais don't do that in public. That's true, I know that. So I mention, what about Pattaya? She says, no, that's Pattaya, not here. So I'm really bummed out. But the saving grace is we're finally in the room together, just the two of them. As we finish up, I sense that things were not the same as they were in Pattaya, as if she had just met me for the first time. So I flat out ask her what's going on. She looks stunned and says, what you say. I go through the whole thing with her and she says, no, I really like you. And again, it's different in Isan. For the rest of the 2 weeks, we do all the sightseeing things and it was great, apart from her new attitude. I really liked Isan, one, because it was very cheap and it isn't always hot and humid. We went around looking at apartments just to see what the prices were like, and boy, were they cheap. I had planned on living a retirement outside the States on a pension and social security. Here was a chance to inquire. It was time to go back to the US and I said my goodbyes to her in the room before we went to the airport. She asked me for some money, so I gave her what I had left. She saw me off and I said, maybe I'll be back in a couple of months. Anyway, during the trip home, I kept analysing the way I was treated and I really was not comfortable with it. Again, back home, bummed out. What else can I say? Now you start missing her, the freedom of Thailand at 56. You can see where this is going. After about 3 weeks home, the Thailand itch becomes worse. So I look at my finances and I can do another trip with no problem. I repeat the same travel plans, 2 days in Pattaya and then up to Isan. It is the same greeting as before and the same stops at Makro. I know the deal and I'm not upset as it goes with the territory. We do some things as before and celebrate New Year's with a few of her friends. What is different this time is she has a whole bunch of cocktails like in Pattaya and the rest of the night was great. I was there for 2 weeks. And she started to hint about fixing up her home and buying some land. I say, here it comes, like an avalanche down the hill. I won't go through all the convincing and soft begging, but I tell her I'm certainly not going to buy her land, maybe some money to fix up her home, much more reasonable. At the end of the trip, she has convinced me to give her money for the house, so she comes up with a figure. I lowered it a little. It's in the thousands, but not the tens of thousands. Same thing, say goodbye and head home. I sent her the money a few months later and she was very thankful. Most of this is online chat, on his social media line. So at the end of June, I'm on my way. I went to go somewhere rather than Pattaya or Isan. I want to go somewhere different. I've never been to Phuket, so this is a destination I choose. I flew in and checked into a hotel in Bangkok. She is flying down to Bangkok also, and we will meet at the hotel. She shows up and stays outside first to smoke her cigarette. I hate cigarettes. The smells bad breath it causes, on, and it seems all the young Thai girls love to smoke. We go into the hotel shower and we get a little frisky, but it isn't really the same as even the last time. And I thought she'd be really happy because of the money I sent her. Oh, you old fool, it's starting to rear its ugly head. We fly down to Phuket and I stay in a nice hotel, and at night she's ready to jump into bed and go to sleep. Nothing in the way of Can't say that word, but you know what I mean. Also, as we were staying there, she was constantly on her phone, sending videos and chatting online like I wasn't there. I think to myself, how did I wind up here from my first week with her in Pattaya? Really just kicked me in the nuts. It was kind of this way all the way back to Issan. When we arrived, the same drill, micro, drinking, small resort, but what I did notice was, where are all the repairs to the house? I'm not seeing things right, so I didn't want to make a scene in front of the family and friends. At the end of the night, we go back to the cottage and I ask her, why didn't you make the repairs to the house? She gets real silent and clams up, so I say it again. Now she looks scared. I think, here it comes, she's gambled it away, gave it to her mother, etc, etc, etc. I'm standing there and I demand an answer. She sees I'm not happy at all. Then she says, land. What do you mean land, I say. Buy land, she says. I went off because we agreed that lamb was not on the menu at all. I was so pissed off and told her to leave and that I'd see her in the morning. Things didn't go well the next few days and she was cold towards me, so back home I went. When I got home, I was still pissed. I called her to tell her it was over between us. Not to go into detail, she acted like any woman scorned, kept calling me constantly. In a few weeks, I forgot her. She asked me every now and then for money. I sent her some. A long time had passed and my anger had faded away somewhat. We talked regularly because she needed money and I gave her some here and there. By now, over a year had passed and she said she was getting a job near her home pumping gas, and told me she didn't like it and was going to move to another town to work in a restaurant. We spoke less frequently as the months went by and she called me again to say she needed some money. I sent her the money, as always, did through Western Union app. Something went wrong this time and the money was not registering that it went through. So I went to Western Union to see what happened to the money, and they told me it was already picked up, so I felt better, but something caught my fancy. I called Western Union back and asked what location the money was picked up from. Now you know where this is going. It was picked up at Chonburi location. You know what that is, guys, don't you? A long way from Issan, I'd say. So I called her and told her she was caught and that was it. Now I'm not mad at her. I don't hold it against her because I would probably do the same thing if I had to survive there. So that was it, and her line account was blocked. The kicker, after about 6 months later, she sends me a message through Google Messenger with a picture of her new daughter asking me for money to help her daughter. Blocks on every social media account I have. Nobody else to blame but myself, and hold no grudges against her. This is Thailand, really. So there you go, guys. I know I'm going to get comments. He was a mug and, you know, he blew his money and all the rest of it. But he knew what was happening. He just liked the girl, didn't he? And as he said in this story, it made him feel young again. He went there for a good time and he had a good time by the sounds of it. But he paid a little bit too much for that. Okay, guys, that's it. No more videos today. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching this one.